Welcome to The Book in Brief, where we explore the greatest stories ever written. Today we dive into The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, a novel that captured the raw, wandering spirit of adolescence like no other. Published in 1951, the book follows a few troubled days in the life of Holden Caulfield, a 16-year-old boy recently expelled from prep school. As Holden roams New York City in a haze of confusion and cynicism, he grapples with growing up, phoniness, loss, and the need to protect innocence, especially that of children. Let's follow Holden's journey and try to understand why this book continues to resonate with readers across generations. Holden Caulfield begins his story from a mental institution in California, refusing to give too many personal details, dismissing them as boring or phony. Instead, he jumps into the events that led to his breakdown the previous year. He's 16 and has just been expelled from Pensy Prep, a prestigious boys' school in Pennsylvania. It's not the first school he's been kicked out of, and his disinterest in academics is clear from the start. He's failing 4 of his 5 classes. Holden spends his final afternoon at Pensy feeling disillusioned and detached. He watches a football game from a hill, isolated from the cheering crowd. His sense of alienation is already intense. He visits his elderly history teacher, Mr. Spencer, who tries to give him a fatherly lecture on responsibility and the importance of education. But Holden finds the encounter embarrassing and patronizing. He's put off by the man's bathrobe, his wheezing, and especially his insistence on reading aloud Holden's failed essay on the Egyptians. Back in his dorm, Holden interacts with Robert Ackley, his irritating and unhygienic neighbor, and Ward Stradlater, his confident and superficial roommate. The contrast between the 3 boys is stark. Ackley is socially clueless, Stradlater is charming, but shallow, and Holden is lost in his own head. When Stradlater reveals he's going on a date with Jane Gallagher, Holden's childhood friend and possible crush, Holden becomes tense and defensive. He's too shy to call Jane himself, but clearly still harbors deep feelings for her. Later that night, Holden confronts Stradlater about the date. He suspects Stradlater may have taken advantage of Jane, and in a burst of anger and jealousy, he punches him. Stradlater easily overpowers Holden, giving him a bloody nose. Rather than stay and face more emotional turmoil, Holden decides to leave Pensy early, days before Christmas break officially begins. He packs up, sneaks out quietly, and heads for New York City, intending to lay low in a hotel until he has to go home. This opening section establishes Holden's cynical worldview, his disdain for adult behavior, and his deep emotional conflict. Beneath his sarcasm lies a sensitive, wounded teenager trying to navigate a world he doesn't understand, and one that doesn't seem to understand him. After sneaking out of Pensy in the middle of the night, Holden takes a train to Manhattan, where he plans to stay for a few days before facing his parents. On the train, he meets the mother of a fellow student and, without hesitation, lies about her son's character, painting him as a humble, well-liked guy, though Holden privately finds him obnoxious. This interaction sets the tone for Holden's habit of inventing stories to protect himself or avoid emotional confrontation. Arriving in New York, Holden checks into the seedy Edmont Hotel, a place filled with strange and voyeuristic guests. From his window, he watches a man cross-dressing and a couple performing bizarre sexual acts. The experience disturbs him, but also fascinates him, revealing his conflicted feelings about adulthood and sexuality. Feeling lonely, Holden ventures down to the hotel bar where he meets 3 women from Seattle. They're superficial, giggling tourists who are more interested in celebrity sightings than conversation. Holden dances with them and pretends to be older, but their interaction leaves him feeling even more disconnected. He mocks their ignorance, but his harsh internal commentary hints at his deeper longing for real connection. Later, he contacts a nightclub acquaintance who recommends a prostitute named Sunny. When she arrives, Holden is visibly nervous and awkward. He tells her he just wants to talk, offering her money to simply sit and chat. Sunny is confused and frustrated, and their exchange ends tensely. Shortly afterward, her pimp, Maurice, barges into Holden's room, demanding more money. When Holden resists, Maurice punches him in the stomach. Holden retreats into a fantasy where he imagines seeking revenge, pretending to be a movie gangster with a bullet in his gut. But the reality is clear. He's alone, scared, and helpless. These chapters highlight Holden's crumbling emotional state. He seeks intimacy but is afraid of it. He wants to connect but pushes people away. The city, which once held excitement and freedom, now reflects his inner chaos. And for all his judgment of others, Holden reveals his own immaturity, anxiety, and aching vulnerability. After the humiliating encounter with Maurice and Sunny, Holden feels even more disconnected. He wanders through the city, haunted by loneliness and unable to sleep. He tries to think of someone he can call, but finds no one he truly wants to talk to. Even though he's surrounded by millions of people, he feels entirely alone. He fixates on Jane Gallagher again. Jane represents something pure and untouched by the phoniness he sees in the world. They used to spend time together in the summer, playing checkers and talking for hours. She once cried in front of Holden, and he still remembers how he held her hand to comfort her. The memory stands in contrast to his present isolation. It's a glimpse into a time when he felt connected, safe, and needed. Holden eventually calls up Sally Hayes, a former girlfriend who's pretty, well off, and enjoys the spotlight of social events. Despite not liking her much, Holden clings to any opportunity to avoid being alone. They make plans to meet later. While killing time, Holden has a surprisingly genuine conversation with two nuns in a cafe. He donates money to them and discusses literature, specifically Romeo and Juliet. It's one of the few moments where he shows sincere warmth, and it reveals how deeply he values innocence and kindness. The encounter briefly lifts his spirits, but the relief is fleeting. Later, he visits Central Park, a place tied to childhood memories. He wonders where the ducks in the lagoon go during winter, a question he repeatedly asks throughout the novel. It's symbolic. He's searching for answers about survival, escape, and the cycles of life. The ducks represent the part of him that longs for reassurance that life continues, even in cold, unforgiving conditions. These chapters continue to build Holden as a deeply lonely soul. He fears change, resists maturity, and yearns for a sense of stability that no longer exists in his life. Jane remains an ideal he can't reach, and every attempt at connection either falls flat or drives him deeper into despair. Holden continues to drift through New York in a haze of exhaustion, confusion, and disappointment. He visits Ernie's, a nightclub in Greenwich Village, where he listens to a talented piano player. Despite the musician's skill, Holden critiques the crowd's phony admiration. Everywhere he goes, he feels surrounded by insincerity. He watches people laugh, flirt, and talk. None of it seems genuine to him. He calls up an old acquaintance, Carl Luce, a pretentious former classmate who used to boast about his sexual experiences. They agree to meet later. In the meantime, Holden buys a record titled Little Shirley Beans for Phoebe, a children's song he thinks she'll love. He imagines giving it to her and finds brief comfort in the thought. While walking through the city, Holden notices profanity scrawled on the walls of a school. The vulgarity deeply disturbs him. He envisions a child reading it and being hurt or confused. He tries to erase the words, desperate to protect children from the ugliness of the adult world. This need to shield innocence, especially Phoebe's, becomes more intense. He goes ice skating with Sally Hayes, and during their date, Holden impulsively proposes they run away together to live in the woods, free from responsibilities and social expectations. Sally is startled by the idea and laughs it off. Holden becomes angry and lashes out, calling her names. She leaves him, and he spirals deeper into loneliness. Afterward, Holden meets Carl Luce at a bar, hoping for real conversation. But Carl is cold and condescending. He accuses Holden of being immature and unwilling to face adult realities. Their meeting leaves Holden even more confused. Later, drunk and desperate, he wanders through the city, imagining himself bleeding from a gunshot wound and picturing his funeral. His thoughts veer toward suicide, though he doesn't act on them. These chapters mark the emotional low point of Holden's journey. He is torn between the fear of growing up and the agony of staying lost. The world feels too fake, too overwhelming, and he sees no place in it for someone like him. As the night wears on, Holden's mental state becomes increasingly fragile. He sneaks into his family's apartment, hoping to see Phoebe without alerting his parents. When he wakes her, she's thrilled to see him, until she learns he's been expelled again. Phoebe scolds him, asking what he truly likes in life. Holden struggles to answer. Finally, he says that he wants to be the catcher in the rye, a figure who catches children before they fall off a cliff, saving them from losing their innocence. Phoebe listens quietly, understanding in a way no one else does. Her presence offers Holden a moment of real peace. He gives her the record, but it breaks in his coat pocket. The image of the shattered gift mirrors his own inner turmoil. His desire to preserve beauty is constantly met with failure. Knowing he can't stay, Holden leaves and seeks refuge at the home of Mr. Antolini, a former English teacher who once helped him during a difficult time. Antolini welcomes him with concern, warning Holden that he's heading toward a serious emotional collapse. He encourages him to pursue education and find direction before it's too late. Holden initially finds comfort in the conversation. However, in the middle of the night, Holden wakes to find Mr. Antolini stroking his head as he sleeps. Alarmed and confused, Holden quickly gathers his things and leaves. He's unsure whether the gesture was affectionate or predatory, but the ambiguity shatters his last hope for adult guidance. Holden spends the rest of the night outdoors, feeling sick and scared. He's convinced that he's disappearing every time he steps off a curb, an expression of his disassociation from reality. He decides to leave New York and head west, starting a new life on his own. Before leaving town, Holden writes Phoebe a note asking her to meet him at the museum to say goodbye. When she arrives, she's carrying a suitcase, determined to go with him. Holden is touched, but tells her she can't come. They argue, and she becomes angry, refusing to talk to him. To make it up to her, Holden takes her to the zoo and then to the carousel in Central Park. As she rides the carousel, reaching for the golden ring on each turn, Holden sits on a bench and watches. It starts to rain, but he stays where he is, soaked but smiling. In that moment, he feels something he hasn't felt in a long time: joy. Watching Phoebe reach, try, and laugh gives him a sense of peace. He realizes he can't protect her, or any child, from growing up, but maybe that's okay. Maybe part of love is letting go and watching them ride. Back in the present, Holden ends his story. He says he misses everyone he talked about, even the ones who annoyed or hurt him. He's unsure if he'll return to school in the fall, and admits he probably shouldn't have told the story at all. But it's clear that some healing has taken place. Alienation as a form of self-protection. Holden isolates himself from nearly everyone. He judges, lies, and mocks, not because he's cruel, but because he's scared. He uses alienation to protect his fragile sense of self in a world he believes is constantly trying to change him. Phoniness. Holden repeatedly calls people phony, a word he uses to describe everything he sees as fake, insincere, or corrupted by society. Ironically, he often behaves in inauthentic ways himself, showing how complex and contradictory human behavior can be. The catcher in the rye Holden imagines standing in a field of rye, catching children before they fall off a cliff. It's a metaphor for his desire to save innocence, though he comes to understand that such a task is impossible. The ducks in the lagoon. Holden keeps asking what happens to the ducks in Central Park during winter. The question seems simple, but masks a deep existential concern. What happens to the vulnerable when the world turns cold? Do they survive? Do they return? The carousel and the golden ring. The carousel scene is symbolic of growing up. Reaching for the golden ring means taking risks, falling, and learning. Holden realizes he must let children live their own lives, even if that means getting hurt. The Catcher in the Rye is a raw and unforgettable exploration of teenage identity, grief, and emotional survival. Through Holden Caulfield's voice, sarcastic, honest, and broken, J.D. Salinger captured the timeless struggle of young people trying to find meaning in a confusing world. Holden's journey isn't about heroism or transformation, it's about honesty. He doesn't have the answers, and that's what makes him real. In his vulnerability, millions have seen their own reflection. Thank you for watching the book in brief. Be sure to like and subscribe for more timeless stories told simply.